to give just a few more minutes to make sure that we've given folks time to get here for the final meeting. Final meeting. How was your Thanksgiving, Kevin?
Hey, Jake, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
He turned it off. All right, we'll just leave him there.
All right, I just looked at name tags. I think I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Welcome, everyone, to your final meeting. It's been 12 months since we convened. A lot has happened since that time. Here's our agenda. We're going to we'll have public comment, and then we are going to step outside for a quick photo. So we can include that. I think it will go in the report in the website. Yeah. Oh, okay. There you go. And then and we're going to have a final review of the recommendations, and we'll check. Yeah.
second. 2, 3, 4, 5. Didn't work. 1, 2. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 2, 3.
All right, that's better, yeah? All right, so we'll have a final review of recommendations. We're going to check for alignment. And if we can't get to alignment or consensus, then we'll vote. So I'm hopeful that we can get to consensus, alignment. And then we'll talk about how is it that you all want to present to City Council. That date is January 21st, and we'll talk through sort of what levels, what altitude do you want to present at, how much detail, what do you want to include in that presentation, how do you want to do that? Do you want to do old school with, oh, actually, no, we're not doing old school because of the, so do you want to use a PowerPoint? Do you want to walk through the report? The report should be finished, I believe, at that point. Yes, Brad? And then who will present? And it can be a combination of you all, it can be all of you. I'm not quite sure the logistics of that. We'll figure that out. That's the sort of bulk of our meeting today. And then we're going to end with appreciation and acknowledgement. You all have worked so hard.
I'm not able to hear anything.
Do you want me to just use a handheld mic? No.
Oh, I can hear you now.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you. I was just going over the agenda, and so at the end of our meeting today, we want to end on sort of this note of appreciation and acknowledgement of each other. That can be of people, it can be a process, it could be of yourself, it could be whatever, but we want to make certain that we spend some time actually acknowledging the work that got done. Any questions about our purpose? All right, very great. I am now going to turn it over. Is Gary? Gary, sorry, I didn't get your last name, Gary, so evidently we're now on a first name basis. So I'm going to turn it over to you for public comment.
As soon as you state your name, I'll start.
Okay, I'll do the best I can here. Gary Kozak. I live here in Englewood. I've lived here all my life. Homesteaded in 1856, my family, as well as I did serve on any Englewood City Council back in the late 80s. I know this is late in coming forward. I've been in surgery and stuff and doing recovery for the last 4 months. I'll read through it, and then I've got one little thing to add if I got time at the end. My name is Gary Kozak, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I'm here to express my concerns about the proposal to impose a fee on landlords and require the registration of rental properties. While I understand the intentions and address the housing challenges, I believe the approach may have unintended consequences that could harm both renters and small-scale landlords. First, let's talk about the economics. As a community, we all understand the additional cost imposed on landlords will inevitably be passed on to renters through higher rents. This could worsen housing affordability, the very issue we are trying to solve. Within raising cost of living, the cost of living has already climbed and brings financial hardships on families. Second, the lack of clarity in the proposal raises significant concerns. Will this policy equally to corporation, landlords, and smaller property owners? In other words, like the big apartment houses, such as those who rent accessory dwellings. Wait a minute, the city council adapted ADU on their primary priorities. Housing options, however. This is a small-scale landlord and are burdening with fees. My detention, participating undermines the progress of creating our affordable housing here. If we're going to keep adding fees, now a fee is the same as a tax. Whether we like to it or not, it depends on how you're going to admission it and are you singling out people. Finally, I understand this task force is considered alternatives, solutions to addressing housing issues without placing undue financial strains on the renters and discourage reasonable property ownership instead of imposing new costs. Let's explore ideas on properties, programs rewarding good practice that will go further in building suitable housing markets for everybody. I will just need to close with this. I rent part of my house to somebody that's disabled and not able to work, and I'm keeping the rent down. You're going to come in and impose on me again to have to add more fees to him. He's already restricted and hardly getting along with it. And this is where there's a real concern of how much more are we going to do this and to whom? How are you going to implement it? My block alone over by the rec center, 50% of the houses are rented. On that 2-block area, I've got 36 little kids. And our school system is losing numbers because we're taking away the housing and making them go to apartment houses. And if you have kids and stuff, very few of them will go into an apartment house. I thank you for your evening.
All right. All right, I want to introduce this tool that I introduced, I don't know how many meetings ago, this oh, thank you, photo. Thank you. Good hand signal. Okay. So we sent out the final draft of the recommendations, and we asked for final input, and here we are. So I do want to give a few minutes to for questions or final thoughts before we actually check for alignment. So does anyone have questions or final thoughts?
I'd like to discuss the licensing fee with the landlords. I know we received a comment from Gary just now. We also received some from Donna Jones online. I've also spoken to landlords, tenants, and other people in the city regarding what we're proposing here. In Denver, they're doing the same thing, and it's costing landlords a lot of money. They're requiring that they install smoke detectors with lithium batteries that are $100 a piece, a lot of different requirements. They're also requiring that every 4 years there's inspections done on these homes. It's going to raise the rent for the people like me that rent apartments or I rent a house, and I've been there for a long time. But my landlord already told me any cost incurred from this is going to be passed on to me. And I find that troublesome. We're supposed to be making affordable housing, not increasing housing costs. If we're going to impose fees, my proposal would be that we impose fees on landlords with ADUs that are being built in their backyards. That we leave the existing landlords alone so that we, people that are renters, can remain at least under the weather a little bit. My rent's gone up to $6,000 this year alone, $500 a month. Now we're looking at adding more fees. How many people can afford to do this? We're not making affordable housing by adding fees. We are imposing hardship on people. And I would like to say, like I said, I propose anyone building an ADU in the backyard, they pay the fees. We leave existing landlords alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Other thoughts, questions, Sophia, and then Hugo?
So I think it's important to kind of clarify what our recommendation actually says regarding the possibility of these fees. We're asking the city council to explore multiple options of possible revenue sources for affordable housing. And that is one of many things on the list. So, and we were also asking them to take a data-driven approach to, find out how much we think this could possibly generate, what's a feasible way to implement it in the city, is that feasible, and to do additional analysis on each of the options. So we're not necessarily recommending a swift implementation of any of the bullet points listed under fund, to my understanding. We're asking for further analysis into all those options. And then I think the reason I obviously share your concerns, and we did discuss that when we brought up these potential licensing fees, because I also rent, also have had, increases in costs. So I totally understand our public commenters' concern as well as yours. But I think that something that brought it back into the fold is considering, well, should only homeowners pay property tax and other things like that? Other people who own property in Inglewood shoulder the burden of taxation to provide affordable housing? Or should we also pass some of that burden to landlords who are already profiting off of the sale or off of the ownership of property in Inglewood? Or should we at least consider that possibility, which is what we're recommending, to be clear. We're not recommending just do it, I think.
Thank you, Sophia. Let's go to Kevin. Just one second. Okay, go ahead.
Is there clarification? I mean, we're assuming, and assuming could really end us up in a pickle here. I'm trying to protect the renters. I don't believe that we need to go after them for fees. There's other things that just happened. We just introduced the mushrooms into Inglewood, which they're collecting fees on. Why can't we go after those fees instead of going after the landlords and the tenants? Doesn't affect anybody's housing. It goes after fees that are being collected. When we start adding to the landlords, which are only making 20%, little over 20%, and we start taking away from them, it starts incurring costs to us. And that's my fear. There's no guarantee that no one's going to raise that or going to impose that. There's no guarantee. At the end of the day, when we go in front of council on the 21st, they could say this is how it is and this is how it's going to be. That's my fear. I can't trust them. I don't trust the situation right now. And I am strictly opposed to that. So that's where I'm at with this.
Thank you, Kevin. Hugo, please.
I agree with Sophia in that there's a lot of things that we've proposed that are more or less a little open-ended, that requires more conversation, and how it will ultimately be implemented as a TBD. I'll just go and say in answer to your question and this concern, as a landlord in Englewood and in Denver, I own a bunch of residential houses in Denver. I had to go and license all of my properties in Denver. The cost for an apartment building is a one-time fee every 3 years and an inspection. But I want to say it was like $50 a unit for the whole year, $4 a month. And I'm not to like say that that's not an increase, but not a material cost on a per unit basis. For all of our residential houses, I think it was $250 once for every three years. And again, not to say that that's not real money or a real cost, but it's nowhere compared to the $6,000 increase that you're having to pay right now. So I think that there's a misconception maybe of a lot of people on this licensing fee thing of like really how expensive these fees are. The flip side to me that I think is really important of knowing what's rental stock in the city and its condition is actually protecting the renter from being in unsanitary or unsafe conditions and putting onus on landlords to upkeep and maintain their property. So for me as a landlord, I take good care of my properties, but having somebody come in and say that, hey, the smoke detector doesn't work and whether it needs a lithium battery or whatever, that's important. If somebody's living in a place and the smoke detector is not functioning and nobody's on top of it, I don't think that's creating a safe or beneficial condition for a renter either. So I think that if we, let's just say there's 1,000 rental units in the city and the city can collect $100 each and create $100,000 that we could staff a person to help oversee the inspections and what's going on. I think that we can actually increase the quality of rental units in the city. And I think that we could put the onus on the landlords to maintain their property and know that if you're going to rent, that you need to keep things in a habitable condition that I think is actually really beneficial and doesn't put a major burden on a landlord or on a pass-through as a tenant. The second thing I'll talk about is a pass-through of rent. So for example, in Denver, we own all these houses around DU, right? So I just got a $250 increase per year for each house. And let's just say that that wasn't $250, but it was $5,000, right? Much more material and would impact. I can't go rent that house for $400 a month more necessarily. It doesn't necessarily fit in the market. Somebody's not willing to pay that amount. So as a tenant, if someone comes to you and says, hey, your rent's up $6,000 this year, you have the opportunity to say, that doesn't work for me. I'm gonna go try to find another place to live that fits within my budget. It's hard for a landlord to pass along a cost like that unless their property is so far below market. So I still think market will dictate rents, not the fact that there's a fee there. It doesn't necessarily enable me to get more for the unit if the market's not willing to pay that for the unit. Okay?
Other thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I have another thought
Please.
about It's rental licensing fee is just listed under fund. I think there's a lot of other benefits to the professionalization of rental housing. Like Hugo mentioned, housing quality standards, making sure houses are habitable, safe, all of those things. As well as we had talked a lot about the concern of corporate ownership of housing and having some insight into who is actually owning the single family, especially the single family rental housing in Inglewood. What it worries me is that this is really only brought up under fund, and this is one that's easy to just get scratched off from a few public comments. And then we kind of lose this idea of like, we really want some insight into who's owning these single family homes, and the ability to maintain a high quality or a livable quality. So my question is really, I mean, I agree with these things that a licensing fee, it's worked in a lot of other places. It has had a lot of positive impacts. But I worry that where it's located just in fund and how it's described as just a licensing fee doesn't get to the other benefits of the idea of having landlords register as landlords.
Gotcha. Please, Kevin.
When I discussed this with the landlords, their feeling is it's a money grab. And to me, that's what this is as well. I can give you guys a few examples. I was just discussing this with my wife. I do a lot of work in plumber here in town, so I'm around, I see a lot of properties, and I know a lot of real estate agents and landlords. I can tell you about 4 or 5 homeless people that were taken off of the street and put into homes in Denver. And if this landlord follows the rules and he goes with the licensing fee, the people that he took off the street and put into these units, because they're basement units and they don't conform to the licensing standards of Denver, they'll be right back out on the street. And to me, that's a fear. We could put a lot of people out because of the inspections, because of the fees. It's not only about money, guys, it's about people that are providing affordable housing in our city right now. And that's my fear, is we're going to cut them off and they're not going to be able to do that anymore.
Thank you, Kevin.
Just on the comment of money grab, it's under the section where the funds would go to an affordable housing fund that's dedicated to providing affordable housing. Is not a money grab to go to the coffers of Englewood to be used for other things. This would go to a specific bucket of money that a group of people like us could direct and make sure that we're impacting and helping people within our city. You are exactly right, though, specific on inspections. If people come and inspect a basement unit that doesn't have proper egress, the landlord could be required to put in proper egress. I've had to do that. I also, as a landlord, a lot of the houses that we have are all DU students, and you have these kids living in the basement without proper egress. And I feel the onus is on me to give them proper egress. God forbid the kids make a fire in the house and they can get out. So on one hand, I don't want to take the homeless person and put them back on the street, but I don't want to have somebody in a unit that frankly is not conforming and potentially creates a hazard for them if there was an issue at the house.
Anyone else? One more before we just take a temperature check. I'm not checking for, we're not voting at this point. It's just a temperature check. Please, Corey.
Yeah. I read this again today, and I read it in the context of thinking through how council would take it and interpret it. And I did find some areas where I was like, you know what, there's not enough, there's some vagueness in it, in our intentions. And so I think there's some places we can do that. But there was one especially that I think some are immaterial and we can just add a little, if affordable, something like that. But there was one that I wanted to just kind of ask is, it's the missing middle housing. So allowing multiple units and small apartment buildings in certain zone districts. And this is under the category of support development of diverse housing types, including. What we don't say in that at all is, are we just allowing that and hoping that is going to breed affordable housing? Or are we saying we're recommending allowing multiple units and small apartment buildings in certain zone districts if there's a certain amount of affordability in those developments?
I think that there's several things here that could use some clarification. I think that the multifamily development comment that's next there, require a meaningful percentage of units, such as 25% to be affordable or pay a significant fee in lieu, more or less could be added to that second one as well.
The second,
The missing,
I'll,
the missing middle, the second bullet point.
the third bullet point that has just multifamily development, where we don't, so for the missing middle, we say allow multiple units or small development in certain zone districts. For multifamily development, we just say that it needs to require a meaningful percentage of affordability or fee in lieu. That sentence could just be added to the above one, require a meaningful percentage of the units, such as 25% to be affordable or pay a fee in lieu. Just on the multifamily development side, and I feel like from requesting zoning changes and taking maybe the other side and understanding how expensive and hard it is to develop product, I understand the putting in the such as 25%, but I also think that maybe that's not necessarily for us to define, or for us to define for a 4-unit building or a 100-unit building. You know, if you're gonna go build a 100-unit building and have to have, let's just say 25 of the units as affordable, that might be a hard project to get out of the ground without a lot of money coming from the Affordable Housing Fund or from other groups out there. But I like it require a meaningful percentage of units to be affordable or pay a significant fee in lieu. It's almost, that one that says this such as is almost going one step further. And I know we talked about it on the small lot development of like having a quarter be that way. But on all multifamily development, I think it's maybe going a little too far with such as 25%.
Can I say something?
So, yes, and I just, as your appreciative facilitator, want to remind you that we sent out the final draft recommendations for you all to give final input on, that at tonight's meeting, we weren't going to wordsmith, we weren't going to, we were going to actually check for consensus and then vote. So I'm at this stage, wordsmithing is one thing, but changing something significantly, like removing a such as 25%, that's sort of a bigger proposition. So I'm going to allow Sherry to speak, and then I am just going to check just to see where you all are on the recommendations as they are, not the wordsmithing piece, but I know that Kevin has a concern about the licensing fee. Hugo, you, I don't know if it was a proposal, but it was a concern around the 25%. Sherry, please.
So I was under the impression that this was kind of a high-level proposal that we were taking to them as ideas that they should explore for the city, not things we're going to make final decisions on the 21st. And therefore, we have this person that we recommended that they bring in to oversee this and really dig into this and see what the impact would be before anything's implemented. And so this is just one thing in this toolkit that we're taking to them to say, hey, investigate this, look into it, see if this makes sense as a revenue source for this. It's not a final proposal. It's just what could we do, not what will we do. And that was really the task that I thought we were given by Chelsea that day that we asked that question of what do they want from us? And she said, just think big picture, think what is possible, and then we'll go in and dig in and see what makes sense for Inglewood. And so this is just kind of a toolkit for them to start with on ideas that we've come up that would work for our city, may work for our city or may not. That was, I didn't think we were digging into, that's why we said 25%, right? Because it's lofty, we know that, and we know it's gonna get whittled down, we know that it's going to get reduced, but we say in an idealistic world, 25% should be affordable of every project. And so that's where we started with it, I think, is what the conversation was last time.
Glenna,
Thank you, Sherry, please.
Jake is online. He has his hand raised.
Who? I'm sorry.
Jake?
Jake, yes, thank you. Jake.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I had the same issue as Corey. The same thing jumped out to me. I know we had talked a couple weeks ago, and I thought the kind of consensus, and I thought what Brad had said was that any kind of zoning changes, or specifically upzoning an R1, was kind of off the table. But if it is off the table, I wouldn't get behind that second bullet point, unless there was some really robust affordability requirement, or as long as that doesn't mean market rate, like unrestrained market rate.
So just so that I'm clear and everyone is clear when we do an alignment, the one proposed change that I'm hearing is adding the some version of such as 25% to be affordable or pay a significant fee in lieu to the second bullet point that starts with missing middle housing, so that we're clarifying. Am I hearing that correctly?
I thought what Jake was saying, that if the city ever touched upzoning in R1, that is when a hard affordability requirement should happen. I thought he was pairing those possibilities together.
Could be. I am not a subject matter expert here, so I don't know what R1 is. So Jay, what are you proposing? You said you agreed with Corey. I heard the conversation to be about inclusion of that language in the second bullet point. Can you articulate what you're proposing to change concretely?
Well, so I guess when I mean upzoning of R1, I'm talking specifically like removing the single family requirement in the R1 districts, which I'm pretty sure is what council tried to do a couple years ago, and which is the thing that kind of blew up. And so I've just always been of the opinion that if we go anywhere near that, and I thought at the last meeting, I thought that the consensus was, or that Brad Power had said that is not something council is going to consider. But if they do, I think there needs, I think like she just said, I think there needs to be a really hard affordability requirement.
Okay. I think it's not for us to say what council will and won't do. It's for us to put forward recommendations. And I think our recommendation is that we see missing middle housing as a solution, or as a possible solution for affordable housing. And so you're opening up that by saying, hey, you can access these, multi-unit or small apartment buildings if you include affordable housing in that, because those products match.
So what I would like someone to do who is from the task force is to formulate an actual sentence. Like, what is the change that you want to make? Please, Hugo.
Allowing multiple units in small apartment buildings in certain zone districts if a meaningful percentage of the units are affordable or pay a significant fee in lieu. You could almost remove the significant fee in lieu part.
Okay.
But I don't think we need to get that's kind of what you're going for, right? I mean, I don't think we need to be, we say it already in the next sentence.
I would personally propose one of those units has to be affordable to 80% or below AMI. That's my opinion. So if it's a duplex, one of the units. If it's a fourplex, one of the units. And I believe that at one point that's what council was discussing in 22.
Well, I think that's what, I mean, by saying a meaningful percentage, I think that's where then council can discuss what a meaningful percentage, and the community can weigh in on what a meaningful percentage is. I don't think we need to necessarily do that here, unless you feel like we need.
I agree, which was my comment on the 25% too.
So let's do this one first, and then I'm going to take a temperature check. So Hugo's going to write it so that you're very clear about the language. You can see it. I don't know about y'all, but I have to see things.
I just don't know what a meaningful percentage is. Like, that's the debate here, right? We said 25% because it's aspirational. We don't want to end up with, excuse me, 5%, which is what Littleton is doing, or less. So I don't know. I think meaningful is so vague that we might as well not have anything in there at all.
So Joe, are you proposing that you explicitly say such as 25% in the same way you did in the third bullet point?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have
I think we
two-
come out strong and we say, this is what we're aiming for. Here's a number we're going for, and then we work from there. To say meaningful, we might as well say, do whatever you want. These are what we're hoping for.
This was the discussion from our last interim meeting of like, we can have a pittance of an IHO, or we can push hard that might prohibit development, right? So it's how do we really push council to be like, be aggressive, but also have it be informed by not just the industry, but what's possible. Yeah, so we ended up with a little bit of a word salad last time, but that's why, is because we don't want it to be too small and too easy, but also we don't want it to be prohibitive of any development. So data informed, needs assessment, market studies, those things should go into pushing as much affordability as possible.
I think 25% is a high enough number that it is going to get people's attention and create that conversation.
Yeah.
I agree, meaningful percentage might not do that. So I'm on board with the 25%.
So we have two proposals. Yeah. Hugo, you should write meaningful, and then we're going to have a ... 25, such as 25%. And I just want to check to see where you all are just on that particular one, okay? Are you finished? Did you say
I think we can move.
meaningful?
Give me a second.
Oh, okay.
I'll
I
get
get it. You're going to write after I check. Okay. If you are in favor of using terminology that is meaningful percentage, can you please raise your hand? So you're in favor of Hugo's proposal, which was you used the word meaningful versus such as 25%. So if you're in favor of using meaningful verbiage, can you please raise your hand?
Can I clarify that?
Yes, please.
So I think there's require a meaningful percentage such as 25. So I think what Hugo was saying was
You're saying combine them?
he wanted to eliminate the such as 25%.
I was just going to leave it with the meaningful,
Yeah,
but
I think both of them are good in there.
Okay, well, hold on, y'all. Hold on. Hugo's proposal was not to include 25%. I'm just taking a temperature check right now on who else is in favor of not explicitly saying such as 25%. I just want to see where we are. So if you're in favor of using verbiage that is meaningful percentage, can you please raise your hand? Okay. And if you're in favor of meaningful percentage such as 25%, can you please raise your hand? All right. Hugo,
I'll add it.
can you live with it? Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. Please, Sam.
Should we use another word besides meaningful? Would that
We're
help?
not going to wordsmith.
Or we're not doing that,
tonight.
sorry.
We are
never mind.
not going to wordsmith. Thank you, but we are not going to wordsmith. This is as far as I'm going to go. Just because we actually do have to get a finished product. We do. All right. So, with that addition to the second bullet point, the missing middle, I want to take a temperature check of where you fall on the alignment continuum, just as a reminder. 0 to 1 is you can't live with the set of recommendations. You oppose these recommendations. 2 is I have serious concerns. I have serious concerns. There may be some of them I can live with, but I have some really serious concerns. 3 is your neutral. At this point, I'd be surprised if you're neutral, but 3 is your neutral. 4 is, generally, we could do some wordsmithing and clarification, but for the most part, there's some slight improvements there. But for the most part, I can get behind this. 5 is, I'm all in. I support the set of recommendations. Everyone clear about the scale? And we do this on the count of 3 because I don't want others to influence other people. So what I'm going to request you do is on the count of 3, you're going to hold up your number of where you fall on this continuum and leave your hand up, please, so that I can make sure to register it. We're not voting at this point. This is just a temperature check of where the group is collectively. Does that make sense?
Don't forget, we have an online participant, though.
And Jake, can you do me a favor and, he what?
We can't chat.
You can't chat. All right, Jake, just yell it out on the count of 3. I'm not quite sure how to do this to make sure that it's captured, but
I
you're
can belt it
not
out.
influencing or others aren't influencing you. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3.
I'm sorry, is this the second bullet point as it's written?
It is the whole set of recommendations. It's
4.
everything. Jake, what is your number?
4.
A 4. That's pretty darn good. And Kevin, we've noted it. We've got it. I want to give you a couple of minutes so that we can register it, because when we do the report, we actually will include your sort of dissenting opinion in that. So if you can speak that now of why you're a 2, you have serious concern, that would be fabulous.
My serious concern lies in the lieu of fees. Last time we were here, we were talking about $269,000, pretty much buying their way out of providing affordable housing. I don't like that in there. I don't like that lieu of a fee. I believe that needs to be removed, that we stick with the 25%, that we don't give these builders a chance to buy their way out, and that they provide affordable housing in our city. That's my concern.
Thank you. All right, we're going to vote. We're going to vote. So that will be noted in the report, just so that you know you have a dissenting opinion, okay? I want to be clear about, so that you don't feel like your voice as we vote isn't being heard. It's being heard and it's being registered, okay? All right, so all in favor of approving the final recommendations that will be presented to City Council, if you can signal your, hold on one second. Jake, where
Yeah.
are you on, he was a 4? Okay, you're right, you said that. All in favor of approving the final set of recommendations to be presented to City Council on January 21st, can you please raise your hand? What do you need to do, Nancy, if anything, to register this? So we have the attending task force members, with the exception of Kevin, all in favor. Is that good enough? Okay, great. Jake, are you a yes or no?
Well, I guess I would like to confirm that second bullet point we were talking about.
Yes. The second bullet point, Hugo said he could live with that. And so that second bullet point will contain the verbiage meaningful percentage such as 25%. Or, what's the last part of that? Fee in lieu.
Yeah, I guess I would prefer to have a requirement that at least one unit is affordable.
Jake, we're not, at this point, we're not changing the recommendations, and you certainly can vote no, and we will register your dissenting opinion.
I'll vote yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, can you give yourself a round of applause, please? This is hard work. This is hard. A lot of different perspectives at the table. You know, a good portion of our time together was about educating, so we try to level the sort of knowledge field. And then when you get to the point of the formulation of recommendations, it's just really hard. It's hard on all different levels. So I acknowledge you all for doing that hard work. And Kevin, I acknowledge you for staying true to your beliefs and registering your concern. And I'm pleased that will get registered in the report. Okay. All right. So let's talk about your presentation. As a reminder, you will have, you saw a draft of the report, and it was also sent out that gives sort of the context of how it is that we got here, and some of the root policy assessment information that was sort of the why, and then of course the recommendations. So it will include, of course, your strategic vision, and it will connect. That was sort of the place we start and end from, was your strategic vision. So we'll include all those pieces, and the council will have that prior to the study session. It will have the recommendations with the proposed change, or with the change, the agreed upon change, in the recommendations. So let's have a conversation about how it is that you all want to present at the council. So a couple of logistical things. You'll have 30 minutes for the presentation, and then 30 minutes for question and answer from City Council. It will be in City Council chambers, which is over here. So that setup of the room is very different than this setup. So I'm an analog, old school person. Like doing PowerPoints this is new for me. I mostly work on chart paper. We don't have that option in there, so you can talk about sort of how you want to do it. But first, I want to have a conversation about what altitude, like how is it that you all would like to present this to City Council?
When you talk about the report, is that what they gave us last time at the study session that was just unfinished, basically? So we
Yes.
haven't seen a final version of that? We haven't seen
No.
that with the information? Okay.
No. There was a recommendation made, and Brad, maybe you can address this, that what was missing from that report was the sort of grounding in the assessment piece that created that why. Why are you making these recommendations? And so we're going to lead off, I think, with the ROOP policy, but Brett, I'll let you speak.
Yeah, so your recommendations are the heart of the report, obviously. So those, with the exception of the change that was made tonight, those are all still intact. So they'll see that. You're obviously familiar with that. We'll make sure that you get the report when council does as well. And as Glenna was saying, we're adding some of the background material about what the task force strategic vision is, how you went about your work, why council appointed it, linking it back to the housing assessment that ROOP policy did, and that type of thing, talking maybe a little bit about the new state legislation that's in place, those kind of background things that can ground not only the council but the wider community in terms of why this group did the work that you did.
So we're not presenting on that, though, on any of the background data. We're just expected to talk about our recommendations.
Yeah, I think that's your choice. I do think that the 30-minute time is something to seriously consider. So if you do want to focus just on your recommendations, that's your best opportunity. But if you want to widen it out, that's your choice in terms of who does what. We don't want to steer it any way, one way or the other. It's entirely up to you to just come up with the best points that you want to try to convey to the council and to the wider community as well, because other people will be watching either live or following.
And that might be a point to remember, is that you are presenting to city council, but it's obviously public. Some folks may not read that report, and so sort of that grounding piece might be something that you want to start with.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest council will get this report ahead of time. I don't think it would be a great use of time to present what's in the report, to read the report to them. I'm curious to know what would be helpful. Like, I think the things that are not in the report, sort of some of how our conversations went, the kinds of influence we had in terms of who presented to us, the kind of, those kinds of things might be helpful to ground how we got to where we got. Taking 30 minutes to read them the report would not be a good use of time, anybody's time.
Aaron, do you think it's valuable to, even if they already know the situation, to kind of reiterate the gravity of the need, not just for city council, but also for everyone present to kind of see what the actual problem is and how vast it is?
And maybe it's good to reiterate that in the context of the people that were part of this group. So why do we care about affordable housing in context to, so I think that gives them some context to what we brought to the, they know the need. They've seen the housing needs report. They got probably presented on that before. So they know that, but then kind of putting that into why do we care here? So that gives them a little bit of perspective into what we created.
But to be quite frank, this is all theater, right? Like they will get the report. They will read the report. Everyone who comes to the council meeting has access to the report. So our deal at this point is to present
Make the case.
Make the case, but they already know what the situation is. The council probably, not to make too many assumptions, has a preconceived idea of where they want to go and what they want to do. Really, what we need to do is make a point to everyone who is at that meeting as a citizen and anyone who might be tuning in to the council meeting. That's our audience. That's who we need to really make the case to, in my opinion.
We need your screenplay. I think that I agree completely. This is much more to the audience of the people who are maybe more opposed to seeing things change, and kind of goes into the concept that we have of the whole campaign. I think it ties in well with the Home is Key campaign right now too.
What's the campaign? Homeless one?
Well, Englewood's current campaign, the Home is Key.
Home is
Home is
key.
key. Yeah. I think it'd be great to talk about some of those things and why it's important to us, why we see this as an urgent need. It's obviously in the needs assessment. There's some scary statistics in there that we could bring up and probably reiterate that people who haven't read that needs assessment would probably hear. I think the council is familiar with it. And then on our recommendations, I think us showing this is an ongoing problem that doesn't end today, and that this is the start, and we're kind of passing the baton to the council and the next group to continue to grow on that, and that there's a lot to be discussed here. Frankly, I mean, this whole thing you could read in 5 minutes. I don't know if we need 30 minutes to present. So how do we fill 30 minutes of presentation time? I think that the 30-minute Q&A session could go on for hours or days, and that, you know, maybe we take less presentation time and more dialogue with council to take in their questions and maybe start even refining some of the things that they will have read and be coming to this meeting with questions already.
I have a question.
Oh, you go for it.
So, okay, if we start with like our why, and then should we pull out some key stats from that study and agree on those and use that as part of the presentation?
Yeah, I think that there could be a great, sorry, Corey, a great component too of, like, we heard a lot of really interesting people talk to us about things that are working in other communities that we think could make a lot of sense in Englewood too. So maybe even
Maybe that's another section. The
yeah,
why,
like
the stats.
highlighting some of the 12
Yeah.
meetings that we had and kind of pull, you know, the nuggets from that, again, others who haven't read it or listened to all the meetings wouldn't have necessarily received or got.
Yeah, so what I was going to say was, I think you're right. They're all going to read this. I think providing them context, which is the why, the data, the influence we've had. And then I think what would be really important is helping them understand that it's not just any one of these things. It's that we need all these things. So we need, you know, we need a full-time coordinator.
There's no poison pill that's like here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need the coordinator to help kind of create some things and facilitate some things. We need that funding because if you do open up, you know, more zoning, then there's the chance to do stuff, and then you need the funding to do it. But you need somebody to facilitate public-private partnerships. So I think if we can work to help them connect how all these things combine to create some different solutions, I think that would be really helpful so that they can get an idea of it's not any one of these things, it's the combination of a lot of these things that creates it.
I'm a facilitator. I'm not supposed to insert my opinion, but this is one time that I'm going to take my facilitator hat off because I happen to come from a background of doing this kind of stuff. So one thing that I learned very early on, I do a lot of fundraising, or I used to do a lot of fundraising, is that in the world of fundraising, donors give because of they have an emotional motivation to give. And we're emotional creatures, and then we go looking for the rationale that justifies why we take action, right? So in your why statement, one powerful, potentially powerful way, in addition in addition to sort of grounding in the root policy and that information, is to tell a story. Doesn't have to be a specific person, it doesn't, but to tell a story. Why does this matter at that kind of level? So you have all of this data, all of this information, and if you start out with a compelling story, you have people. You got people. Then you can follow up with all of that. So I don't know how you do that logistically, if there's someone on the task force that has a story or something, but I offer it as a potential kind of way to begin. it's disarming oftentimes. Yeah.
I
And
think
when you're
Miss
disarming-
Rees is the perfect example. I mean, to be quite frank, a mother, an educator who has experienced difficulties finding housing in this very community, who's lived in this community for a very long time. I mean, not to put too much pressure on you, but you are the face of this issue. And I think having you go up first and kind of explaining your situation would have a profound impact.
You were already interviewed for the Home is the Key campaign as well, so you're already kind of, your story's being used for this.
And I must say, having seen the preview of the video today, it's extraordinary.
I'll just put up. Oh, yay! Okay. I'll just put Amber storytelling.
It's already typed up too, so that'll be easy.
Not like in a bad way. Not like you're storytelling, but like you're telling a story. What else?
Maybe then like who we are as a task force, why then, as a, what our intentions were, I don't know.
Well, it would be interesting. This is hard for me not to just facilitate. So y'all take it for what it's worth. It would be interesting. You'd have to do it so quick, and it'd have to be really sharp for each of you in a couple of sentences to tell your why, your personal why.
I think that that might be a little overkill, but I think like 3 or 4 of us
Three or four,
who
yeah.
can tell their why, I think would be great, whether it's as a business owner or somebody who works for Habitat for Humanity. You know, I
I think that would be good too, especially if we tried to link it back to the different faces of affordable homeownership. You know,
the
there's
different
lots,
whys.
Yeah, there's lots of different needs within affordable housing, and so like, you know, trying to paint that picture. There's not just the one person. There's lots of people.
Brilliant. So you've got Amber kicking it off, then a representation of the task force telling their personal why, and then where do you go from there?
Stats. I mean, someone get up and talk about what the numbers say and.
Yeah, the data.
I would recommend just keeping that really tight then. I mean, it's all out there. It's all been reviewed. It's all, in the information.
I'll just say high-level data for grounding. Then what?
I think the next thing we talked about was influence. Who do we hear from?
I
But
kinda-
again, tight.
Just for a framework, I guess, I kind of grouped all of those things as sort of what were the driving forces behind our recommendations. So the presentations, which I get as what works elsewhere. I had this little list of just my brain, like, what are we afraid of? These are, our recommendations came from what are we afraid of? We talked a lot about stuff of trying to prevent the bad things from happening. What do we desire to see in our community? What works elsewhere? And then, I don't know if this fits in that, but we all came back with like, the city needs to intentionally invest in this issue, money and people and things like that.
Hold that thought. So you said what we're afraid of? And then, Aaron, what?
I'm just kind of putting these, like where our recommendations came from, kind of in buckets. It's
Yep.
like we talked about afraid of certain things happening in our city, sort of what we desire our city to look like in terms of affordable housing. We had a lot of talk about what works elsewhere. And then one of the kind of common conclusions was that the city needs to be intentional about investing in the issue.
I think that investing part is kind of a good link into then our recommendations.
Yeah, I was
Because I
just
think
gonna
that our first recommendation is they need to invest with staff, another board, a fund.
And I do think we should talk about our recommendations. It's just not like, we're not going to go through all of them. We're just going to paint that high level picture of them.
I think if Amber does storytelling, a couple people give a quick personal why, somebody does data, a couple people kind of rehash the influence that we got from the different meetings. I think we can certainly bring up what we're afraid of. And I think that, some things that, Kevin, that you've talked about of, unnecessary taxation or fees that would impact renters. The letter we got today about, irresponsible density and changing a community character. I think that there could be some good high-level things talked about there, but I think that we can talk about in our recommendations of how we're making recommendations and kind of giving it to council to more or less solve for some of those issues that we can't today, I don't think.
So going back to what you desire, that might be this, right? That was your kind of North Star. That would be a nice lead-in to.
Yeah, somebody reading the strategic vision.
Yeah. All right, so we have 30 minutes. Where are the recommendations? Do they come after the concerns or do they come before?
They come after.
They come after. Okay. So you
And
guys.
I think back to your
Please.
point about storytelling, if we do a high level of the recommendations, what we can maybe then do is paint that picture of how these recommendations could produce certain types of housing. And so we can almost tell multiple stories. So with, with a person, with some funding and with lot divisions, we can create this type of house. And this type of house could be sold to this type of person at a affordable mortgage. Or with these multi-unit developments, with 25% of them affordable, there would be opportunities for these types of people to rent. So I think if we can tell those different stories, that might be somewhat captivating.
Kind of like two people, one person can give like the recommendation and somebody else could give a quick sentence or two context or.
I think just painting that picture of
Yeah.
what it turns into in terms of a development.
So let me just say it back. So Amber kicks you off. You have a couple folks, 2 or 3, make sure that it's representative of the council, share their personal why. Then you have the high-level data for grounding. Then you move into the sort of the influence piece. Then there's the sort of drive for your recommendations, which is what you're afraid of, what you desire, what works elsewhere, and that the city has to be intentional in investing in this. And there was a comment that said, then you would move into your recommendations. And so I just want to get clear on that. Do you move into your recommendations from there, and then you actually highlight some of the concerns around increased density or the increased fees on landlords?
When we talk about the influence, I'm thinking about the different sessions that we've had. I get a little confused in what you have there beyond that of the afraid, the desire, the city has to be intentional in the concerns. I kind of think that's all somewhat tied together and part of the presentation. It obviously is in a list there, but how that's organized and done as that piece, I think is the part of this that is maybe could be worked on further.
Oh, for
You
sure.
wanna-
And my suggestion there was that our driving forces behind the recommendations could kind of, I think, be grouped into some of these buckets around those things. So just as a sort of framework for how we present what drove us to these I think the important thing there is communicating what drove us to these recommendations. They're not just handed to us by a consultant. They're not plucked out of the air. They're not, this is why we're recommending these things.
Is that helpful, Hugo?
Yes, a little bit. I still feel like that area of how that's presented, I'm a little confused on.
Can I ask a logistics question?
Please.
How are we going to work on this? Do we have to be in a public meeting similar to this to be able to come up with our presentation? Or are we individually working on it and coming back together? How do we do this in the constraints of a whatever we're
Great question.
in?
Nancy? No, that's okay. If the task force wanted to, so we're sort of, at a very high level working on the presentation. If they wanted to convene to sort of nail it down, is that a public meeting?
If there's 3 or more, yes, it's a public meeting.
What are you guys doing over Christmas break?
The next part of this is we can kind of loosely go over who, and that might answer that question of how you sort of refine the presentation and then some of the potential constraints for that. Please, Hugo.
Can we create a working document for this that could potentially be a public document with comment that people could add if they have a good why, people could add a good influence they see. Obviously, the presenting the recommendations and Amber telling her story, the data pieces that people like and see, and that we could maybe all spend a couple weeks trying to fill in a lot of this.
Nancy, is that possible to create, sorry, and I should know this, but it goes out. Can they create a document that they're all working inside of that is more the content of the presentation?
Not if they're all adding to the same document. So you could do like what we did before, we create a document, I send it out to everyone, and then they send all of their comments to me. But it becomes an electronic meeting still if you're adding to, according to our city attorney. Sorry.
Would it make sense to have one more meeting since we have the January time? So I mean, the first is the Wednesday, or I don't know, the first would be the 7th, I think, of January, and then we would present on the 22nd, I don't know, 21st.
Or could we nominate or assign 2 people to just do it?
That's what I'm wondering. Let's keep going through sort of just the high level content piece, and then we'll begin to look at who's like I want to present on this piece of it, and then we'll figure that out. I think that's a good suggestion. Please.
I was going to suggest that we encourage Kevin to do the part about what we're afraid of or what are your concerns, right? And like give you that opportunity to be heard and appeal to the community as well.
You willing to do that, Kevin? Okay, great. So we have it up here. I didn't know what to put. I don't mean to put it so crass, dissenting opinion, but just I'll put concern.
When I think of the concerns, I kind of tie that also to what we're afraid of, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not suggesting that we talk about what we're afraid of in these recommendations. I'm talking about what we don't want to happen in our community.
Understood.
So we're talking about, corporate ownership of single-family housing, of the elimination of affordable housing, of, so I'm not just talking about dissent, which I don't want
R1
that to be confused.
upzoning.
Understood. It is more of the to your point, the driving sort of reason for your recommendations. Want to hear from some other folks? Right now we've got, I think, we've got, let me just say it over and then we'll go through, and Sophia, I see you there. So this part it's a little fuzzy. We need to work on that a little bit. That could be that Aaron works on that, given he has a sort of vision of what that looks like. Kevin addresses those sort of concerns of, well, there's two types of concerns. To your point, there's the concerns of what happens if the council or the city doesn't take action. They don't take action on those recommendations. And then there's these sort of just broader concerns that came up over the course of the last 12 months around too much density and things like that. So I'm going to first go to Sophia, and Joe, then I'll go to you. But let me just finish this up. Then you do your recommendations, and then you end with telling multiple, we'll figure out what multiple looks like, stories of what would be possible if the council moved forward with these recommendations. Sophia, and then Joe, please.
I think I was just wanted to visit the chronology of that middle section. Like, I think that talking about some of the concerns that we've heard, the concerns that we've had internally about density or too much change or things that we've mulled around, we would want that to come before potentially our story about why, what we're afraid of if nothing happens, if the council doesn't take any of our recommendations, and just our strategic vision, everything that, I feel like that should come after the other concerns we've considered before we go into our recommendations. I just wanted to clarify, see if anyone agreed.
So help me inside this. I've got you kind of the driving force behind the recommendations, which is this, what happens if you don't take action? And then some of those bigger themes of density, things like that comes sort of somewhere at the driving force behind the recommendations and before the presentation of the actual recommendation. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think I was saying like the concerns from the broader community and with internally, like Kevin would represent, and then we would discuss more our strategic vision and our concerns if the council does not adopt them. I just wanted to end on that prior to explaining what our recommendations are, rather than ending on what people might be concerned about.
Got it.
By those recommendations, if that makes sense.
Okay, let's start a new one.
Could it be after like the data kind of hit on the concerns and then go into influence?
That's exactly what I was thinking, yeah. Or like, yeah.
I'm still on trying to figure out how we get this presentation done. Could we do a volley maybe that, Nancy can send us a bullet point and we can all maybe chime in to the areas that we're interested in, or if we have a why or a data point, and that from that, maybe we could divide and conquer with two-person groups that kind of take sections of this. I think the recommendations piece could be done by two people. The influence piece could be done by two people.
Hold that thought, Hugo. I'm going to come back to you. But I want to make sure I've got sort of just the sequencing. And then I know, Joe, you wanted to share something. So if you can hold that just 1 second. So we're going to take about 5-10 more minutes to get clear about this. Sorry, I'm running out of space. So Amber, we'll put this as storytelling. And then 2 to 3 task force members. Personal why. And then I think, Sophia, your proposal was then you talk about the concern, the drive, like if city doesn't, is that what you're suggesting? Or
well, then I
after
think
data or before
then I think we
data?
would talk about data, well, I guess we could do some of the concerns and then data, but I think we could talk about the data and the reason for the task force's existence, make the case, and then as kind of part of influence, maybe talk about some of the presenters that we had, as well as some of the concerns that were brought to us through public comment or internally, some of our own concerns, some of the concerns that Kevin has raised, all kind of, it maybe is included in influence. Does that make sense to y'all?
Okay,
And then move into, like Erin was saying, the concerns that we have if council doesn't do anything, the issues that we see with affordable housing and what we landed on as our strategic vision that guided our work, that yielded the recommendations. And then we go into recommendations.
I think we cut out the part about talking about the learning that we did over the 12 months. That's what I see missing in there, because,
Under data, presenters?
I mean, data is really,
The presenters.
the presenters are talking about,
sorry, I'll put presentation,
Presenters/influence.
influence. I'm just shorthand right now, and strategic vision, and then over here, and then you go into your recommendations, right? Okay, and then you end with what's possible. I'm just shorthand, what's possible. And language around like what's possible is like imagine if you all were to adopt this whole set of recommendations, what may be possible for this type of resident, for this type of, like that. Joe, you've been so patient.
I just want to make sure we're not setting up a section of our presentation to dissent against our findings and our presentation.
That's a good point.
That's not what we're aiming for, right? Because I don't want to do a whole thing like, this is what we're suggesting, this, and this. Now, here are the reasons why our presentation is problematic. So I just want to put that out there and make sure that's not on the agenda. And then the other thing was that we mentioned concerns about density. There are concerns about density? Like, is that something we want to?
I think that was more external sort of
Yeah.
public
Okay.
comment, kind of.
I
yeah.
do see a value in talking about, here are the concerns that we've heard. Fees imposed on landlords. Some of these recommendations might have limit the ability to develop. It's sort of acknowledging that we've heard these things and we've thought about these things and we're not doing this in a vacuum.
And these are the reasons why we're moving
Yeah,
forward.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, setting that up as like, we've heard, we know, we're not like, we get comments of like, as if we haven't heard.
We're
these
not
things.
blind to it,
Right.
but I just don't want a situation where it's like, here's our presentation, and
we're gonna tell you
now,
everything that's wrong with it.
yeah, and now here's why that doesn't work, or here are our issues.
I think that the concerns need to be accretive in how our recommendations are more or less addressing them in some aspect.
The concerns are there to make the point of why our suggestions are valid.
Sure, yes.
All right, Hugo, you had a recommendation, and I asked you to pause so I could just get this down.
It was just trying to figure out how we do this.
Yeah.
The first Thursday is January 2nd. I don't think that's going to work too well for anybody. January 9th would be the next Thursday. That we potentially could have a meeting where even if just a percentage of the people could make it, we could probably get close to finalizing something. And I think that then between now and then, we have maybe a couple weeks where we're all independently providing comments to Nancy that she could send back, and then maybe we meet in groups of 2 to advance little sections, and then we all come together on the 9th to finalize.
Yeah, I'm going to ask for city input on that. If it's a public, it would be a public meeting, does it have to be hosted? Please.
Well, I just wanted to let you know, you may not all be aware, but there is lead time. So even though your presentation's on the 21st, the council packet goes out on the 16th to all the council member and the public. So we have to have everything by staff no later than the end of business day on January 9th to get everything all posted and accumulated and reviewed.
Does that include
And
our
by
presentation?
everything, is
Yeah.
that,
Yes.
could you just have a high-level agenda? Like, you don't have to have the content of the presentation, do you?
I'm going to defer to Sean or Tim.
Council prefers to have everything that you're going to present during the meeting in the packet by that time.
But that's the report, right?
Can we get
Yeah.
it to you by the 10th?
Yeah.
I think that, I'm just curious, like, how other groups in this situation do these presentations. I mean,
They typically will get the packet and the slides from the presentation in their packet.
Correct. And we can give you a little bit of wiggle room there, but it definitely cannot go out past the 16th. That's the drop dead for when it goes out to council. We can work with you within a few days of that, back into that, particularly on the PowerPoint, because I think we can help if it sounds like y'all finished your recommendations tonight, so we can go ahead and, have communications, format that report.
You have a template for
Right.
a PowerPoint.
Right, we do have a template that we can get you, and we can even help, whatever you want in that, we can go ahead and build that for you as well. And to answer your question about could you all do that, we can send you a Teams link. As long as someone's there to hit record, that's fine. We don't have to have it in this room. Y'all could do it virtually. I mean, you could do it in person too. That Teams would actually be a little bit easier for us, but.
If I could, I would just add, I don't want to belabor your meeting tonight, but I think it would be most helpful to the timeline of this in your work is if you decided tonight who's doing what portions of the presentation, that will focus you on working on that part of the presentation, and we don't have to figure that out subsequently.
Yeah, thank you. I think that is a great suggestion. I also think because figuring out your content without knowing how much time you'll have, it could get, even though we think 30 minutes is a lot of time, it could get really kind of unwieldy. So, so let's do that. We're going to do that in 5 minutes. So, we know who's starting us off. That's Amber. In terms of sort of that follow-up storytelling or profile of a resident that this is important to as someone who's on the council, or the task force, who is that? Joe?
Yes, me.
Who else?
I just want to ask Amber if she's okay with kicking it off. I don't know that we ever got your consent.
No, she said yes.
I'm fine.
Yeah. I definitely heard her say yes. Who else? So we've got, are you representing business? You're representing renter?
And possibly schools as well, just like
Perfect.
making that link.
Who else do we need as a representative?
I think one of you guys on the nonprofit side probably makes sense.
You're a resident too, right, Aaron?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you're more powerful. I'm not a resident, so.
So is that good? You have Amber, followed by Joe and Aaron?
I think I thought we said, oh,
I said 2 or 3. If there's someone else, we can definitely.
who's not here? You could sign them up.
You're going to sign who's not here?
Jake?
Sophia?
I mean, Amber is a renter as well, so like it's not necessary, but I can do it. If no one else wants to do it, it's fine.
You're a renter? I'm sorry, I should know. All of this.
Corey, what else should we tell them that why of those couple members? Who are you going for?
I think the business one is great. You also tried.
gonna
to-
move
You also
us.
tried to live here, right?
Yeah, over multiple years, multiple times, I've tried to buy a house out here and have been outbid in every way.
I think maybe, I mean, that's why I was thinking Steve that's lived here for a long time. Is that his name?
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah. Just some long time. It just shows the breadth of the people that have been part of this. So voluntold.
Okay.
Yes.
Just like why
Someone's
he joined
gonna
the
have to
task
work
force.
with
Why
Steve,
he's-
Because he's not been here, he didn't vote on the recommendations.
Yeah,
Is
is
there
that
somebody
a,
else?
is that a smart move then?
No, probably not. Who's a homeowner? Have you?
I'm just a homeowner. That's my primary reason I'm here, but I'm not long-term.
Jake, Devin, you lived in Inglewood for
Yeah.
your whole life? Jake?
Jake,
Calling Jake?
are you on?
Still with us?
Line any
Ah,
longer.
gosh.
Oh, there we go.
I-
Volunteer, Jake.
Yeah.
Jake,
Yeah.
And I also think that that's an area where if somebody has a why that they come up with that we could add.
okay, let's keep going very quickly. Who wants to do data? Who is particularly interested in the grounding piece of data? I'm gonna really move y'all, because darn it, y'all are gonna do appreciation and acknowledgement. You've worked hard. We're gonna end the meeting that way. So let's move. Who's
I can do
sitting
the
there, they're
data.
like, I know I can do it. Sherry?
I can do the data.
Do you need two people for that?
I don't know.
No?
No.
We're no, okay, I mean, that's,
It's gonna get.
Yeah,
gonna get
it's
full.
already going to be a lot
Say
of people.
again? So Sherry, anyone else joining Sherry? Going once, twice? Sold, Sherry. Then there's the sort of, telling the sort of, how we got here, influencers, presentation, that kind of thing. With, and I wasn't clear, are these two sort of coupled?
No, I think what we had talked about next, and I agree with Sophia's recommendation, was maybe this is the best spot for those concerns and the challenges we've heard. Not the dissent, but like an acknowledgement of those concerns that might.
So that
To
comes.
merge that with the presentations in that it is material that influenced our conversation over the year. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, this
Like,
is what we've
here-
heard.
We've
that's,
heard
like,
this. We
Data,
also,
we touch on the stuff of like, yeah, people don't like density, they don't want landlords to, whatever. And then we can go into sort of, we've heard these things, here are our here's what drove our recommendations.
So
after
these are coupled kind of together, like it's grounded in not only these things, but also some of the information that you got along the way. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I'm talking about taking a moment to acknowledge, here are the challenges that we have heard of and that we will face in advancing affordable housing. Here's what the input we received from public comment, that kind of
I've
stuff.
got that piece.
Right,
Are
and
you
then
doing this
separately,
piece?
moving into the driving forces behind our recommendations. So not tied together.
I think Aaron should do this section.
I'm just gonna put, are you doing the presentation, like sort of walking through the, not like in December, we had such and such percent and such, but the sort of, the things that influence your recommendations is what I'm hearing.
I could put that in with data and say that this is the data that we were, some of
I think the data is
sources
the
that
data's the
we
start
got
of it.
data from
Perfect.
during our sessions as well.
Perfect.
Here's the root policy, but here's the other data we looked at. I don't know.
Aaron, are you good with?
I'm good.
Driving,
Oh, yeah.
And I don't mind helping in this section, kind of rehashing some of the meetings that we've had and nuggets that we've taken from them.
great. So Hugo and Sherry there. We've got, anyone want to,
Was that on the concerns? Would that be Aaron and Kevin?
Aaron and Kevin here. And then Then here's a big sort of existential concern if we don't do anything, which leads to your strategic vision.
Do we want to actually, I mean, our strategic vision is long. I don't know if we really want to, I mean, it's in the report, right?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to read it, but it was the North Star that we kept sort of referencing as we were going through this process. So you can touch it lightly, or not at all. But point being is that was kind of, you think about the funnel, you started with your strategic vision and then moved down to your recommendations. I wouldn't say that's separate. I would say it's with your recommendations. So who's presenting recommendations?
Can we nominate someone?
Yeah, we talked about not reading through the recommendations.
I don't care how you do it, but someone,
I
are
think
you
it's,
going to
it's
have
more like a
someone
big
do
state.
it?
I think it's like a big statement. It's you're painting this picture.
Yeah,
of,
this is what's possible through, that's
Yeah,
what we were.
With the recommendation, it's like the cause and effect, like the recommendation and then potential effect. I think it's a multiple person spot.
Y'all aren't going to get through the details tonight. You're going to meet and get through the details. I just need to know who's going to do that section.
I'm happy to do the what's possible
Okay?
section.
That which ties to the recommendations.
And it's how you're going to end. So who's got whatever level you're going to, you're
I'll
going to
go
do
in on
something around recommendations. Please.
I'll do some with recommendations. I don't know who else wants to join. I'll live in that section.
Say again, Sherry.
I think Hugo and Corey should do the recommendation.
I'm happy to bring Sophia involved in that too. I'm happy to help work on that part, but I think that a couple people can present it.
All right, I'm going to say it back super quick, okay? We're not getting to the details right now. Y'all are going to work this out in twos, so you don't have to have a public meeting until January 9th. Storytelling. We got Amber, Joe, Aaron, Jake. Data. We've got Sherry and Hugo, and the present sort of all lumped together. On the driving force behind, which includes the concerns, we've got Aaron and Kevin. Kevin, you good? No one asked you if you're good with this. You good with that?
Yes, Tim.
Okay. And then on this sort of big concern if no action, strategic vision recommendation, we've got Sophia and Hugo. And then Corey is going to bring us home with the what's possible, like painting a picture of what's possible.
I think that all works. From a presentation standpoint, I feel like you'd almost do it together.
Yeah.
Right? Recommendations, Corey says what's possible.
That's 3 people then.
Right, no.
Y'all will work it out. So.
There's like 10 speakers, so if you
And
take
I'm okay
3 minutes.
I'm okay to remove myself from that bottom section
From this section?
in the planning if, from a presentation standpoint, you
I'll put a
know,
question mark.
I don't want to make a 2 or 3 and cause problems.
Please.
I just had one more. Do we need somebody help? These are lots of handoffs, which are not often the most smoothest thing. Do we need somebody to kind of run the show and make
Like
sure
a
that?
Master of Ceremonies.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to turn it over to, I will tell you that Master of Ceremonies takes more time. 100%. When I run events, I never have a Master of Ceremonies.
Okay.
Takes more time.
Okay.
Or,
Alright.
you know, you're.
I think we do
Got it,
have
stage.
plenty. I think this is great what we've outlined. I do think we have time.
If everybody focuses on like 3-minute segments, then that should cover the 30 minutes.
I think it would be good if on January 9th, if we did meet,
The time.
that there's potentially some practice or quick, very high level dry run of how that could work. I still don't understand how these people have public groups do presentations when you can't theoretically work on it.
Theoretically, with each section, theoretically, you have about 5 minutes. Okay? That's just like real high level for y'all to work inside of.
We could go to an open mic and workshop
First piece
this.
5, this piece 5, this piece 5, this piece might be a little bit longer. So you've got 5, 5, 5 is 15. This one might be 10. I'm giving you some wiggle room there, okay? Because I think the point made, and if you can have it really tight, there was a point made, I don't know who made it, that the real juice is going to be in the dialogue. That's where the real juice is going to be. So if you can keep it really, really tight.
Who is that dialogue with? There's lots of us.
In terms of when city council has questions, y'all going to figure that out on January 9th.
Yeah, is the
hunting.
Q&A just with the city council or is it with the public as well?
Just city council.
Okay.
And we're in this room, I believe. And so we can set that
Oh,
up.
you are in this room?
Oh, we're in the, oh, we are in the
It's a regular,
chambers.
it's a study session before a
What we'll
regular
probably do
meeting.
is set up the tables at the front of the council, kind of there at the dais, and you'll be at the tables, and we'll set up additional tables where all of you can be seated there and, participate in that dialogue, unless you all would prefer to make that a smaller group.
This is where I'm punting. And y'all are on your own on January 9th, so you'll be self-facilitated. How's that sound? Quick question, Teams or in person?
I like the teams.
I'm okay in person. Sorry.
For the meeting, sorry.
For
Sorry.
January 9th.
Yeah, I think if people can do it in person, I think that would be better.
Yeah, I
great.
think more gets done that way.
Yeah. And you're
Agreed.
if you're gonna practice in person, great. Is there anyone whose name up there that can actually be there January 9th? At this time period? Who? Anyone that's presenting whose name is up there can't be there January 9th. 5:30. Yay. Y'all actually got a lot done. This is, like the presentation piece, you always think, oh, that's simple, but it's not. You got a lot done. Please, Sam.
So is our plan to like split off and kind of work independently on
Yeah,
these
I'm gonna say
sections
that.
before we meet January
Yeah.
9th? Is anybody feeling overloaded? Because I'm not doing anything up there on the moment. So
I
can-
think that it would be good if Nancy could send an outline that we could maybe send just to her additions. So if you have thoughts or a great data point or something of influence or a story that any of us would want to add, we could work on that. And then the people who are working on that section could jump in. But with the number of sections we have and the number of people we have and the fact that we can't meet more than 2, I don't
Well, if you want off that last section, maybe that'd be a great place for Samantha to jump in with
Yeah.
I'm just
Sophia.
offering to help with one if
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
doesn't want to do 2 different sections.
I'm okay. I'm okay with that.
I'm not quite sure what conversation's happening right now. Sorry. And I'm your facilitator. What's happening so I can get it clear? Someone say it,
I think Samantha would like to participate or help if she can in a section, but she doesn't have a section.
So Hugo's giving up a section, one of his, right?
so, Hugo,
Would-
where do you feel,
would you
where
rather-
do you both feel? So let me ask it this way, where you're the most comfortable and sort of passionate about presenting. Here, I'll start with you, Hugo. Here or here? Is it rock, paper, scissors? Is that what we're gonna do? Do you have an opinion, Sam? Here or here?
I'm not crystal clear on the presentation's influence section.
You're what?
Would you rather go through and pick out what you liked from what we learned and pull those nuggets, or present at the end our own nuggets?
I'm okay with either. You could choose.
I think our own nuggets.
Which one? Down
She'll
here?
take the bottom one, so I'll stay up top.
Okay. All right, good. So 3 people can meet without, no, 2 people can meet. Darn it. I don't know how the third one, if y'all will organize this last one, because you've got 3 here.
I'll work with Hugo
Okay,
on what's possible. There you go. I'll do that with Corey.
perfect. Okay, look at that.
Back in.
All right, so let me say back what's going to happen. I'm locking the door. You aren't leaving until you do appreciation acknowledgement.
I have to go to a holiday party.
All right, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to type this up. I'm going to give it to Nancy. She's going to send it out. You all will give input and sort of like high-level kind of content pieces. And then if you want to meet, no more than 2 of you can meet at the same time or have a conversation or assemble or anything. It has to be no more than 2 before the January 9th meeting. At the January 9th meeting, you're going to come together. It's going to be a public session, and you're actually then going to begin to piece it together. Yes.
If in between the meeting and the 9th and the meeting on the 9th, I think if everybody could have like a quick outline that could maybe be given to Nancy
Right?
so that we all are not seeing it all for the first time on the 9th and can maybe provide comments or input in other sections that we weren't a part of, I think would be probably good.
Hugo, would it be helpful if I took that, what you just said, and put it into a template of a PowerPoint for your working session on the 9th?
Yeah, totally. Where we all can kind of come with some slides that we prepared. I like that.
Great idea. So, so outlines is sent out. Presenters populate the PowerPoint, draft PowerPoint. That then is sent out before January 9th. Meeting here. Nancy's going to check on location. Does that sound right? Any questions? Okay, this is my favorite part. We got 5 minutes. It is, you've been together for a long, long, long time. And I am always kind of like amazed that people volunteer for this kind, like you sign up for this kind of project. And it speaks to your commitment and certainly you came here sort of representing a particular viewpoint, but really what you did was you worked in collaboration on behalf of a collective. And that is extraordinary. And for me, this is my acknowledgement to you, for me, that is, that's what's possible for civic engagement, for community, for just people being able to come in with very different perspectives and without sort of compromising your values, you're able to set aside in order to have really rich, wonderful conversation. So I just, I appreciate that about you, and it has been a pleasure. We've got Ms. Tasha in the back here for the 2 of us to get to be on, you know, you don't know what's going to happen with this. So it's been just really a privilege and a pleasure to walk alongside you on this journey. So thank you for that. So I open it now. You've got two, and you're gonna, I ask that you keep it brief. Appreciation acknowledgements can be meaningful and brief. What do you, if there, you can answer one of the questions or two of the questions. We're not very accustomed to saying what we're proud of bringing for ourselves, acknowledging ourselves. Most people opt not to do that, but that's also really powerful. You gave up a lot to be here. So the second question is, who or what would you like to acknowledge or celebrate? And here's what I'd like you to do. If you know that you'd like to speak, if you could just raise your hand, I'm going to count off. 1, 2, remember your number. 3. We'll start there, please. Joe.
I just want to thank everyone on the council. I feel so fortunate to be able to be here with a group of very thoughtful and very intelligent people. It makes me feel hopeful about the future of Inglewood and for the future of the world. I think I'm so fortunate. I think you guys are amazing, phenomenal.
Thank you. Number 2, please, Sophia.
I'm proud of just how much I've learned, and I know a lot of you probably feel the same way. Like, we have learned so much over the last year, just stuff that I didn't know about at all. And I think that's really, really awesome. And it's been such a cool opportunity to do that. And I want to express a ton of appreciation for all the city staff that helps us and our post officio members that have been here as well, facilitating, offering information. That's been super great. And all of y'all, I feel super appreciative to everybody else on the task force, and you're all super cool, and hopefully we'll have in a couple months like a fellow traveler like after party or something like that. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Please, Corey.
Yeah, as a not resident, more of a content expert, who is trying to develop affordable housing all across the city. I just want to acknowledge all of you for being residents, investing in your community, trying to create more affordable housing and a city that you want to see that is for its residents. So I commend you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Corey. Who else? Yeah, I was facilitating a group yesterday, and this woman said, "I'm so uncomfortable with silence." No, I got her. She said, "I'm so uncomfortable with silence," and I'm actually very comfortable with silence, so I will wait because we have just a couple more minutes. Please, Sherry.
I just wanted to say I wanted to celebrate the passion in this room for this topic. I think everybody came with ideas and contribution, and I appreciate everyone for sticking it out.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please, Hugo.
I guess I'll acknowledge that we've done a lot over the last year and got to, I think, a really good place, but that this is just the beginning. And I feel like there's a lot more work needed. And I think there's a lot of people in this room who can continue to push that forward with the same passion and make sure that we see these units and things built and brought online.
Beautiful, thank you. Please, John.
Thank you. I just want to, thank all of you on behalf of the city of Inglewood. You've been just exceptional citizens of this community and this region who are passionate about this topic. And I can't wait, and I know the rest of the staff shares this, to really put the implementation steps behind these recommendations. And, whatever council is willing to do with this, we are ready and excited about what you've come up with, because it's really good stuff. I didn't hear the first hour of the meeting, but I read your drafts. And if it's anything like that, it's just exceptional work. And in the time and commitment you've made, it's been great. And I want to acknowledge and celebrate our facilitators, both of them. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you for that, Sean. I'm going to end by saying, this didn't happen. There was a lot of work that happened to get here. And so specifically, Nancy, who did so much behind the scenes, heavy lifting behind this. Thank you. Shelley, where are you, Shelley? Thank you. We had a design team that helped with sort of thinking about how do we, what's the agenda look like? What does the facilitation approach look like? So that was Brad and Sean and Chelsea Chelsea kind of was in the beginning, but Lindsay was on that, and Tim and Nancy, and am I forgetting anyone on that design team? So we had meetings before the meeting, and it was just a real pleasure to get to work with y'all. So with that, you are blessed and released. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can't wait to see what happens.